This is the Better Informed Immigrant podcast. My name is Kola and I'm here with my co-host KD. This is the first of many, hopefully, video podcasts that we're going to be doing. We're transitioning to video. So this is the first one and we're going to give that a shot and see how it goes. But KD, how are you doing?
Very good. We're out here in Jacksonville for a vacation with the kids, and we're going back to Connecticut.
Oh, so how's the vacation going? Like, you guys have been doing a vacation for a bit there. You guys came over to come see me in Virginia a few weeks ago. Now you're in
Yeah.
Jacksonville. Next thing I hear, you're going to be in Nigeria. What's going on?
Yeah, it's the first of its kind actually, because I don't think we've traveled the amount of traveling that we've done this
Mhm.
year in comparison to previous years. But it's pretty good. Especially the kids, they enjoy just being out there. We went to the beach today, and they didn't want to leave. You had to drive them out of the water. So, like, guys, let's go. But they're really having fun. School starts next week, so we're back to start of school for them. So we're trying to get them to enjoy as much as they can before the week is out.
Yeah, one of the things that you are making me think about is the fact that sometimes we get so wrapped around life and what's going on that we don't
Mm.
necessarily take the moments to kind of enjoy it. Like this time that you and your family are taking to travel to different places, yes, it may increase some financial cost. It's going to be memories that your kids are going to are going to remember for the rest of their lives, right? They're going to remember that
Correct.
time you guys went to the beach, and sometimes we forget those things when we deal with the day to day. So I think that's pretty cool. Um, how are you guys dealing with work? Are you guys working remotely while you're doing this, or did you all take it off as holiday time or vacation time?
Working remotely. I took off Monday and Tuesday because
Okay.
those days are really just the days that I have to be in the office. And then the other days, I'll be completely remote, which works well for me. And she's still working remote, um, and getting back to our normal schedule next month. So that's why I think we're able to take advantage of this trip
Okay.
to get the kids out. And it also got me thinking. As Africans, we grew up in an environment where this is not a thing. So it takes some adjusting to trying to like get the kids out there and go experience things. We grew up in an environment where you go to school, and after school, you maybe sign up for another tutor just so you can get some additional work in.
Yes.
And we find our own vacation ourselves. And those are just 1 hour, 2 hour that you can steal to go play soccer in some field and hope that your parents don't catch you and then go home after that. So, because our parents are also out there hustling or working somewhere, so they don't come back and say, "Oh, yeah, you're off school. Maybe we need to go on a trip." No, we don't think that. And I think maybe it's also like the class of citizens, because I do know there's some Nigerians who would take vacations, obviously, but I think a larger portion of our culture does not really buy into the idea of vacationing. We might go to some places over the weekend, but that's pretty much it. You don't go a week vacation trips.
So I will have to disagree with you a little bit. I think we don't take vacation for the purposes of calling it a vacation, especially going to what I would say random places. But we do take vacation because if you remember, everybody goes home for the big holidays, right? So those could
December?
be the Christmas time. It could be, I think it's called Eid for the Muslims.
Correct.
And I forgot what that actually translates to in English. But Abraham supposedly killed the ram instead of Isaac.
Correct. Correct.
Ileya is what they
Yeah.
call it in Yoruba.
Call it. Yeah.
Um, so I recall that a lot of people, if not everybody, goes home or someplace for those things, and those are vacations, right? So in my youth, what would happen is we would go to my grandfather's house, and all of my cousins would be around, right, from wherever it is. So that was a good time to actually spend time with your extended family. And our extended family was very big, like most African extended families. So you actually got to spend time with them and do that. I would consider that a vacation, although maybe most people would not call it a vacation. But
Yeah.
what you will not have happen is somebody going to some quote unquote random
Random point.
location um, to go
during the
with
work year without any festivity. Remember, you just mentioned
correct.
festivities. Festivities, some companies honor that. You just don't wake up any random date during the calendar year and just go someplace, is what I meant by we don't have that as part of our culture.
I
And
see.
plus, I also mentioned the class of the citizen. Like what you
Mm.
just mentioned shows class in a way
You're
because,
saying I'm privileged.
yeah, there's class there. People who travel during like the festive periods as well are mostly, I would say, people who, number one, have their own trade and they can just close shop and go wherever they want to go.
Mhm.
But when you're working with a company in Nigeria, especially, unless your company is also honoring that vacation days, you're not going, you're working
Mm.
because you might come back and you don't have a job anymore. So,
Oh,
yeah.
especially if it's like a small business
Correct.
or small or
So,
medium-sized business.
yes, yes. And that's why I think most times, like the Eid Fitri, the one you mentioned, I think that's the Leah one. Companies do honor, and that's pretty much like a weekend or a couple of days, not a
Mhm.
1 week trip.
That is true.
So there's this aspect of it that we're not used to, which I think also ties into tourism in the country. We, and I don't know if this is the same for all the African countries, but or most of the African countries, but for Nigeria, we don't really have a good tourism industry to where people can just decide that I've worked so much, I just want to take 1 week off to go
Mm.
relax somewhere. That's not in place yet, but we'll get there hopefully soon with advancement and the government trying to do new things. But yeah, not to digress. So
No
what?
worries. I'm actually going to keep going on this for a little bit because I was thinking about something else now. So let's talk about people in the diaspora, right?
Mm,
The advent or the popularity of remote work, I think, has opened up a new type of vacation, right? Like what you guys
mm,
are doing. Before, if you had a job, I'm using the US as an example, you would get 2 weeks off or 3 weeks. That's your vacation period that you could get from your
correct.
company. It could be vacation or it could be called paid time off.
Time off.
Uh, but that's not really a lot of time, right?
Mm,
If that's 2 weeks you get for the whole year or 3 weeks you get for the whole year,
yeah.
it is enough time, I guess, but it's not necessarily a lot of time to be able to go do things, right? But being able to work remotely actually opens up a new aperture now where you could go for vacation, take a week or
Yeah.
two, go someplace brand new that you've never been before, or someplace you've been before but you enjoy, and still be able to do your job and just enjoy the rest of the day while you're there, right? So I think it
Correct.
opens up a new type of vacation that I didn't previously think about. And that actually reminds me, there's a friend of mine from college. He works from home in this case. And what he did and with his family was they were thinking about moving in the future, and there were a few places that they were thinking about. One of them was Tennessee, so they actually just moved the family for a month, got an Airbnb, and stayed in Tennessee to kind of see what is that going to look like
Before
before they make a
moving.
decision of whether or not they want to move to Tennessee or someplace else. That's not something you would have been able to do if you didn't work from home.
Yeah.
But it opens up new opportunities for vacation and taking time off that we didn't necessarily have before. And I think that's something to kind of think about to create these memories that we're talking about. Like, I am very guilty of what you're just talking about, right? When it comes to vacation, I always think about the money sometimes. That's number
Before
one.
committing to it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the money before committing to it. And then the other thing too is that I always like longer vacations, right? Because I feel as if 2 weeks, I don't really get to experience
Yeah.
anything. I'm not interested in tourist traps. I'm interested in how do people live in that area, and in 2 weeks you're not able to kind of get a feel for that. So I usually like longer ones, and perhaps
Correct.
this is something that actually provides an opportunity to do something like that where you can go for a month, still be working if your job allows remote work, and be in a place for a month and really get to experience the culture and things like that. So that's pretty cool.
Definitely. And you're very right because I have an acquaintance who is based in the UK. He went from Nigeria to the UK off of the tech program that they have for people in Nigeria to migrate to the UK. And because he's working with a company remotely, he's traveled, I would say, 5 different countries, just moving around and living in those countries for weeks checking out locations, visiting places while still working. Because one of the benefit, like you rightly said, is that you're able to put in work and you're able to then spend your time off work at places that you normally would not have access to if you're still back home. So he used that, and I think he did a bit of blogging too. Or should I say vlogging? Because he was recording his visits to some of these places. And the next country he visits, he would also keep a record of that, which I was excited to see. I'm like, oh my, that's the next level for work and life balance in a way.
And I think it's a lot more convenient to do it in Europe, right?
Yeah,
Than it is. It's probably also convenient here in the US. It's just not as popular, right? In Europe, people tend to do that a lot. So that's pretty cool. And I'm going to change directions a little bit, right? So we're talking about vacations, and we were actually going to talk about something else, but just on this vacation topic. But there is planned vacation, and let us say unplanned vacation. And I want
yeah,
to kind of dive into the topic we wanted to talk about today, which may be a little bit more of an unplanned vacation, right? So there's an article that I saw today. I think you've also seen it, about a gentleman who is based in Michigan, who is from Kenya, right?
correct.
And is basically self-selecting to go back to Kenya as a
Before
result
he's
of the
deported,
immigration. Yes, as a result of the immigration policies that are going on right now. Before he's deported. So I don't have all the information, right? And you read a news article, and we don't really know the whole story.
the facts, yeah,
But I'm just going to use what's in the news article to kind of talk about it. But in his case, he was married. He has 3 kids. I think the oldest is 13 years old. He's been in the US for about 15 years.
um,
He's gone to school, became an accountant, was working. But from an immigration standpoint, there were also some challenges, right? Some
correct.
immigration official declared that his marriage was basically fraudulent, right? It wasn't a real marriage.
Married,
So he's kind of fighting that in court. And because of COVID and some of the other things that are going on, the court case has been delayed. So he's in this limbo where he's not
correct.
necessarily in the quote unquote right status while he's waiting for the case to make its way
To
through
the
the
results,
courts
yeah,
and get a judgment there. But he also has this information from the immigration official. This is before the start of the court case, where he's saying, "Hey,
correct.
we don't think your marriage is a real marriage. It's just something for paper." Which I don't know how people come to that conclusion. I'm sure they
Yeah,
have a lot of information that they're taking a look at. I don't want to talk about whether or not this is right or wrong, but I do want to talk about the fact that this is a gentleman now that's going to Kenya on,
yeah,
let us call it, an unplanned vacation, right? He's been
correct.
here for 15 years. I'm sure he has roots in Kenya, but he hasn't done anything in Kenya in the last 15 years, right? Kenya is not what it was when he left, right?
Yeah,
He has a wife and 3 kids that are
kids,
here,
yeah,
and he's having to go to make sure that he's in a good position from an immigration standpoint. And that's something that happens to immigrants across the world, right? African immigrants, especially. Some cases,
okay,
a lot of African immigrants come into the country or any country, and they come in illegally. Let's call it what it is, right? They come in
yeah,
illegally, and in some cases, they have to go back after many years. And what do
yeah,
you do, right? Like, it's not as if you got deported when you just came in, right? You could say, okay,
yeah,
you know what? I still have the support systems in place. Something like this. What do? You have responsibilities. Your
mm,
kids are here, right? The mom is here. They have to eat. I'm sure his wife works, but still, that's the loss of one income in a country that really requires 2 incomes to be able to maintain a
yeah,
family.
yeah,
Like, how do you deal with that? I don't even know how I would deal with that, right? What
correct.
systems would you put in place? So I am spitballing here because I don't really know how to really categorize this. Um, so if you have any thoughts about like this and maybe how somebody could handle it, it would be interesting to kind of follow this case as it goes, because
Yeah,
it's a very interesting scenario, and I think we can learn some lessons from it. What do you do when these circumstances happen? How do you minimize or prevent the circumstances from happening? So many things we could talk about this particular case. So, any thoughts about this?
yes. Because as you were explaining this, I'm just thinking one thing, and I'm thinking country support. Like, what's the government of the country doing to support experiences like this? Because I think before we started, we were discussing offline about some African countries now creating programs to invite more Africans to maybe come back to Africa either to invest or even to live in Africa. And when things like this come up, it's an opportunity either from I don't want to use marketing because that might make it sound too business oriented, but um, it's a good way for each of these countries or Kenya, for example, in this case, to show the kind of support they're willing to provide for anyone from Kenya. Either they've moved here illegally or not, or they're having some immigration issues. As a country, you're providing that support system to guide them for how to navigate that. If that includes exposing them to job opportunities or even housing and the type of facilities that will make this transition easy, even though this person would have the choice to choose it or not, but you make it available. That's one aspect of it that I can think through. The other aspect from a personal standpoint would be we've always talked about as Africans living here, making plans back home as well. Now, some people do this efficiently and consistently. Some really think, I don't ever want to go back. So, I'm not planning to do anything back home. Aside from the issues that we are well aware of when it comes to trying to do things back home, because you're not there physically, there's also the trust factor and the aspect of being able to oversee what's really happening there because you're not there. Um, this I think speaks to a bit of that. Going back to your home country and either having some kind of, I don't want to call it business, but having some kind of route. It could be you supporting an existing relative there, or you just having housing or some kind of resources that you can fall back to when things like this happen, because we never know when it would happen. So, just planning ahead would be a good way to maybe address this, but would not be the only way.
Mm. So that's a really good point. When you were talking about, especially the last point you brought up, I was thinking about a podcast I listened to by a former CIA officer. And one of the episodes, they talked about something called a go bag. Basically, they have a bag such that if there was an emergency, they don't need to go around the house to go pick different things up. They just grab this one bag and they go, right? And in
That's
that
everything
bag,
they need.
yeah, he has everything that he needs to be able to
Yeah,
survive for a period of time. Things like maybe water, things like copies of documents, things like that, right? He just
correct.
grabs that one bag and he heads out. And you know, the concept I think came from his CIA training. And in their case, sometimes maybe they're trying to escape or they're trying to do other things and maybe other scenarios. But it also applies for other things as well, right? You can have a go bag metaphorically or physically for other
Correct.
situations. And the point you were bringing up here is this gentleman, I'm using him as an example. I don't know his situation, but I do not know that he has resources available in his bank to be able to go withdraw to go on this trip to Kenya, right? One of the things that we know happens, especially in the economy that is the US, is that it's kind of designed in such a way, it's a consumer-led economy. So therefore, the goal is for you to keep spending, right? And one of the things we've talked about in previous podcasts and maybe talk about again in future podcasts is that we tend to spend everything we make, or we spend more than we
Correct.
make sometimes, and we rely on credit card and whatnot,
Credit cards.
right? Now you have a
Yeah,
situation like this, you're going to Kenya and you may not be able to take any financial resources with you, right?
correct.
And you still have your responsibilities here, right? So the wife and kids still have needs that would need to be met.
Man,
And so how do you deal with that? So I think it's wonderful the part you were talking about saying, hey, like we need to start creating programs, or some African countries are creating programs, kind of like an intro to the country where they help you establish roots and help
correct.
you go through the system and help you understand the system in that place. And that's wonderful if they're doing that. I would like to hear more about that. But I think that those systems and those processes may be designed for people that are coming back with financial resources to be able to implement it,
Yeah,
versus somebody who is coming back because of some immigration challenge and may not necessarily have the financial resources to be able to establish things back home, right? So he's going to
correct.
have to start from level 0, maybe level -5, because he's not been there
Correct.
for a while.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you deal with that, right? So I'm just thinking off the cuff here, but one of the things I'm thinking about is, hey, like, we may need to start thinking about what our go bag is, and that should include
Hmm.
having some funds, having some savings to do that. It could also include what you talked about, right? You were talking about, hey, you should have something back home. It could be a house, it could be a small apartment, it could be a condo. I think they're doing condos now in a lot of
Yeah.
different places. You may never use it, but if you did have to use it, you have something that you
Yeah.
can kind of rely on. I am one of
Correct.
those people that tend to fall into the camp of, you know what, I'm not sure that I want to invest
In something like
uh,
that.
in some of the African countries because of some of the challenges, right,
Yeah.
that we've talked about. But this may be a good case for saying, hey, you need to invest, right? You need to, in personal finance, there's something called diversify, right? You need to diversify
Yeah.
your portfolio, and this could be one of the ways you diversify your portfolio, right? Such that you are prepared if anything should happen, right? And what we're talking about is kind of unique. We're talking about this as if it's new, but it happens every day, right? Let's be honest. People come over to the US and other countries around the world, and they get deported either immediately, sometime over after periods of time. Sometimes they get in trouble
Correct.
with the law, they get deported, or sometimes there is no trouble, there's nothing, but something happened and they still get deported. So this is not a new story. It's just a little unique because of the immigration situation in the US right now. But this is
Correct.
something that people are going through every single day, and we kind of need to think about that from that perspective. But also, perhaps we also need to think about it from the perspective of, hey, what do we collectively as a diaspora want to do to kind of support these people like this, or even support some of these countries that are establishing programs to help people that are coming back home, right? Regardless of the scenario. So I don't know enough about what I just said. And it makes me think that we may need to do some research. We ask our producer to do some research on this topic and see which African countries are doing programs and what those programs look like, and maybe talk about them in future podcasts. But it is pretty interesting to kind of see the to say the least. I think I am I am slightly emotional about this because of the responsibilities that are being left behind,
Correct.
right? And I don't know how to handle it.
Yeah. And that's assuming that as a family, they've decided that he can go and they would stay, or they have to all have to go together. You know, we don't have the inside information there to know what the final decision would be as a family for them, if they all want to go, or they just want to have him go, and maybe figure out ways to get him to come back. So that's really going to decide what kind of commitment level this would be. Because if they all have to go, I think that further increases the commitment level as a family. First, having to situate the whole family, and then changing schools and changing scenery, um, pretty much changing their whole life completely. If they all have to go, but I would think maybe the goal would be to keep the rest of the family here while they try to address the issue with his own stay in the country.
Yeah. So according to the news article that I read, the family is seems to be same here. So the family is not going back. It's just him.
Yeah.
It basically is electing to do this in advance of getting in trouble with the law, right? So it's electing to do this such that he can be out of the country and wait for the case to go through the courts, and hopefully gets a positive resolution for him, and then he comes back, right? I think that's kind of the mindset. But
Correct.
this is something I would have to pay attention to, and I would actually like to talk to him at some point to kind of get some thoughts about what he thinks about this whole situation,
Correct.
because it's a pretty interesting one, I think.
It is. It is, and it's in a way tied to. I know I mentioned getting support from African countries, but because some West African countries, especially, they're starting to receive refugees from the US. So all these deportees and everybody is really getting sent to some African country. Now, if the government is entering a deal with the US to receive these deportees, maybe they are doing that also not to have to promote the kind of support they have for people who are coming voluntarily, because I think they're getting some kind of uh, kickback. I can use the word kickback for receiving this uh, deal from the US. So whoever is doing it voluntarily, I don't think that has to the benefit that you get as a government. But if the US is bringing a bunch of people, you get some kind of benefit from that. Maybe that's the reason why they're not creating programs to encourage people to actually do this voluntarily, and just sit back and watch how everything unfolds.
Mm. You know, I'm not aware of the US deals, but I do believe I read something a few, probably months back now, about the UK doing a similar deal with Rwanda. And I know there was some uproar towards the end of it, and maybe it fell through a little bit. But I think the UK was going to basically deport people to Rwanda, right? And I am interested in knowing why a country, in this case, an African country, would enter a deal like that, right? Apart from just the financial implications, right? We both know that they're getting money from the
Correct.
country, so that's not, let's put that aside for a moment.
Yeah.
But apart from you getting money, why would you do this? Like, what is the gain that you're getting? And my concern would be, okay, so you get this money from the US or from the UK. How much of that money is actually going to support the people that are coming in, right? Or is that just getting funneled into other government programs or somebody's personal bank account, right?
Mm.
And the people that are coming in, especially for the one I read about the UK, were not necessarily going to be people from that country. It could be any deportee that the UK wanted
Yes.
to send, right? So I'm
Correct.
making something up here, but let's imagine that there's a gentleman from Syria or from somewhere in the Middle East who was in the UK legally. He got caught by the immigration officials. They deported him, and instead of deporting him back to his home country, they deported him to Rwanda.
So,
What is he or she supposed to do, and how does that government support him, if any at all? Because let's be honest, right? I don't have a lot of faith in some of these African countries supporting these people when they actually arrive on the ground in those countries.
well, in Africa, especially our country, we have something that says Oyolowa. So Oyolowa is another way of saying you are on your own. Like once these people get to any of these African countries, even though these governments are getting paid, I'm sure they would not tell them directly to their face, but in their minds that they're on their own. If they like, they find way to their own country, or just walk around our streets. You're on your own. We don't care. We got
Oh
paid,
no.
and that's it. That's the end of it. Because I don't think the U.S. also will go check back 6 months down the road and say, "Oh, how are they doing? Are they faring well?" Or they just want to get rid of these people and move them to a certain location. And after that is done and the deal is completed, they're not going to check back. And typical of most countries in Africa, the government is just going to get paid and find some place to put these people, but not checking on them, and hope that maybe they'll figure out a way to find their relatives to pay for their ticket to go back to their home country, or find another place to go to, or if they like it there, they can find their own way. Would be the idea. But to your point, what does that look like for the country long term? Like, if these are a bunch of people who maybe have past criminal background, does that increase criminal activities in your country? Or does that invite more criminal activities from overseas to your country if these people have ties to more criminal syndicates overseas? So the aspect of this that do require a deep dive that we don't know from the information that we get online. Is just African government. I would say decisions get made off of gains and not future planning. And I think that's something that is obvious to most developed countries like the UK and the US, and they leverage that most of the time. They know all they have to do is come up with some kind of gain, and we don't think futuristically. How does this impact our growth pattern as a country or as a continent? That aspect of it, I don't think is getting talked about. I do know there are some people in each of these countries that have conversations around the impact of this type of arrangements. It's just that it doesn't get to the level where it becomes a policy or there's some things being made to address these issues futuristically. So it becomes another podcast like we're having. And we're hoping that things get done, but eventually they never do. But we never know. Maybe things will start to change for the better.
Yeah. So you bring up some really good points. I don't have any counterpoint. I thought about two things while you were speaking. So let us assume a scenario where somebody who was deported has ties to criminal syndicates, right? But I'm also thinking about the scenario and I'm making stuff up here. If you have a gentleman from like El Salvador, for example, right? He was here in the US, he got deported to some African country, like without any support system, without any money, right? Because they
Go.
just carry you and you go. Um, I think on one hand, you are kind of pushing that person to go into a life of crime, unless they're going to just starve to death, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of the African countries don't have support systems like we do here in the US. There is no
No.
shelter, there is no food kitchen, or right. So those kind of things. But the other thing too, I was thinking about is that I do not even know that the syndicate ties would help over there, right? Because you're going to stand out from everybody else, right? You don't look like everybody else. You cannot blend in.
Correct.
So I don't really know how that looks like. So just when you were talking about this whole scenario about the criminal syndicates and what is the impact to the country long term and whatnot, I was just thinking about some pictures were popping in
We're
my
about
head
to
and was
go
making me,
Hollywood.
yeah. Um, so I
We're
think
about to go Hollywood.
that's one thing. Changing topics a bit. One of the things that I was thinking about recently was, hey, I want to take a break from blaming governments because no matter which country you're in, right? You know, we're talking about African countries, you're talking about the US, you're talking about the UK, regardless of which country, there is no country where the citizens don't blame the government,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we would say that maybe the US and the UK is not their government is a little different from the African one or from the Asian one, right? In our minds we will rank them up and down, but no matter which country you think of, the citizens there are always blaming the government, saying it's a bad government. So the question is, what's really a bad government? And is that really quantifiable? Because nobody seems to be happy with their government, regardless of which country it is. So I was going
Correct.
to take a break and say, hey, maybe we stop blaming government
Mm-hmm.
and start focusing more on solutions. Sometimes we don't have solutions, but that's just something to kind of think about. I do think this conversation that we're talking about may be something that we have to keep looking into. And the reason why I say that would be because as these things happen, kind of trying to figure out, not talking with people, that's number one, but also trying to figure out like, this is an experiment. What are going to
Yeah.
be the result of the experiment? And we are going to see that, right? I would be curious to know how many people have been deported to African countries and what their demographics are. And I don't know that that's available, but that's something we can go take a look at and go see if that data is available. But this is some interesting times.
I'm interested to see how it would change the skin colors in Africa. We start to mix races
Mm,
together. We get more people that are looking Hispanic, but they're Africans. Uh, that futuristically, I think, will be us evolving as the world grows into this era of more people going into places that they're not used to being. Because I don't think there's a mass migration of people from South America or even not North America going to Africa. But
mhm.
if you're deporting more people from those places to Africa, that's really going to start to change the dynamics over there to some extent.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, right? When people think of migration, especially migration for opportunity, we think of people going from Africa to the rest of the world, right?
Correct.
Or to the Western world primarily, maybe Western world and Asia.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily think about people migrating to Africa
To Africa.
and what the impacts for that is. So that's a really good point. You bring
This
in
is
some really
unplanned.
interesting points this time.
This unplanned migration, like unplanned vacation, like we talked about. So yeah.
So, KD, I think we should probably wrap up here. This has been a fun conversation. We'll take a look at some articles and see what happens over the next few days and weeks, and maybe
Yeah.
keep this as a running topic that we discuss. But before I let you go today, anything else that you want to communicate either to me or to the audience?
nothing outside of telling the diaspora to think of ways to support people who are getting moved. Like if we can come together and create programs, like you rightly said, everything is not the government. Individuals too can come up with support programs that could be funded in different ways, either crowdfunding or seeking support from corporate bodies, and just providing avenues for people that are getting moved um, in and in this aspect of unplanned migration that we just talked about. That I would say would be a good thing to look into for each and every one of us.
Mm, that's a good point. I talked about it earlier, and I had already moved on, but that's a really good point that you talked about. So I think this would be a good action item for us to take, work with our producer on. We need to start doing some research and finding out some of this GoFundMe. I think it's a popular one in the US. There are probably different
Correct.
ones out there around the world, but finding some of these things and providing some support, right? We need to put some money where our mouth is, and it doesn't
True.
have to be a lot. Sometimes if many people provide little, the combination of
It
our
has
resources could do really amazing things. So that's something to definitely think about. Thank you for bringing that up.
yes. Yeah, but that's it for me.
All right, KD, it's always a pleasure. This is our first video episode, so hopefully this looks great on screen. But really glad that we could do this and talk about these topics, and I'm looking forward to our future topics. Have a good
Awesome.
one.
Same here. Thanks. Have a good one.